All right, today we're going to talk about relations. And relations are just going to be sets of ordered pairs. They're very handy. They are pretty easy. I don't think we're going to have many problems with this section, but we just have to think about relations as being ordered pairs. And remember, from graphing, we know that ordered pairs always come in an x, comma, y. And we're going to need to remember that when we're talking about relations. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about domains. And domains for relations are always our x values. And our ranges are our y values. All right, so if I'm looking at a relation, here's a set of ordered pairs in number one. The domain for those, we're just going to list the numbers that are the x values. -3, 6, -4. And since -4 appears again, I don't have to write it twice. I've already got it listed. Our range, then, we're going to look at our y values, and I'm going to have -3. From that first ordered pair, I've got a -9, I've got a -6, and I've got a 1. Those would be the list of range values. Just listing x's and y's. For the next one, the domain is going to be, I've got -3, I've got a -2, I've got a 0, I have a 2, and I have a 4. For the range, I'm going to list the y values in the relation. I've got an 8, a 3, a -1, another 3, I don't have to list it again, and a 15. So in relations, domains are our x values, ranges are our y values. And incidentally, it doesn't matter what order you put the numbers in. This range was out of order from smallest to largest. That doesn't matter as long as everything is listed in there like it's supposed to be. Now, I could give you relations in many different forms. Here's a table, and so we could think of a table as kind of like an XY table if we were graphing. If I want to put this in ordered pairs, that's going to be Bob. It looks like it's test score. So Bob got an 83. Susan got an 83. Jim, he got a 76. And Bruce got a 96. Okay. Now, I'm going to do the same thing I did above. If I want to list the domain, I'm going to list the names in this case. So my domain is going to be, use the little braces and put Bob, Susan, Jim, and Bruce. And then for my range, I'm going to have an 83. And since Bob and Susan both paid at 83, I don't have to list it twice. A 76 and a 96. Okay, there was, so that using a table, another way to show a relation. Okay, let's look on the next page. Here's another way to show a relation where I've got items on the left, items on the right, and I'm using arrows to show. And you just have to watch to see how far arrows, if they've got two arrows coming out from the same ordered pair or part of the ordered pair. So on this one, A is going to X, but look at B. B is going two places. B's got an arrow that's going to X, but B also has an arrow going to Y. So I need to list that one as well. And then C is going to Z. So if I'm going to list the domain, I'm going to list my X values, A, B, and C. And my range then would be X, Y, and Z. So there's another way you can see a picture of relations. Here's another picture with circles. Looks kind of like a Venn diagram. Looks like these are names and then pets. So I've got Alice, she looks like she's got two pets. She's got a cat. And then Alice also has an arrow coming out going to dog. Brad, he's pointing to snake. I'm not a fan of Brad then. I wouldn't be going over to his house. I don't want to see any snakes. And then Carl is going to a cat. So again, if I'm going to make the domain, I've got my names, Alice, got to put my D, Alice, Brad, and Carl. And what would my range be? Cat, dog, snake. In any order, you don't have to have it in a particular order, just make sure they're all there. Okay, now where we use a lot of domains and ranges is when we're talking about graphs and when we get into functions later on, graphs of functions and what are the domains and ranges of graphs of functions. Now when we express domains and ranges in graphs, we are going to express it in interval notation, which means I'm going to use either parentheses or brackets, but the only time I'm going to use parentheses is if I have open circles on my graph. As long as everything is closed, I'm going to use brackets on my graph. And remember, domains are x values, ranges are y values. So this is how I like to look at it. X values, the x-axis runs from left to right. So when I'm doing interval notation and I'm writing interval notation, I always want to put the smallest number first and then the largest number. So I'm going to be looking from left to right at my graph at where the furthest left point is and the furthest right point. For my y values, I'm looking from bottom to top, because on ranges we're looking at y values. So for my domain, I'm going to look at my leftmost point right here. That is the ordered pair for that's -5, 0. I'm just making some scratch work. This is not my actual domain. The right hand point looks like it is +5, 0. All right, so to show interval notation for that, I'm looking at my x values. And since there aren't any open circles on this graph, I'm going from -5 to 5 with brackets. There is my domain. Okay. For my range, I'm looking from bottom to top. So the bottom point on that graph is 0, -5. And the top point on that graph is 5, 0. And this works out with all these same numbers because it's a circle. So, I'm sorry, this should be 0, 5. Going too fast. Let me erase that so that when we see the notes later on, we know that that should be a +5 right there. I've got to watch me when I'm listing my ordered pairs. Now remember, ranges are y values. So again, smallest, bottom to top for that range. Now, circles will be like that. You'll be using the same numbers over and over again for your domains and ranges. When we look at a picture like we have at the bottom of the page, we have a parabola. Parabolas either smile or frown. This is called a parabola. They either smile or frown. On domains, well, let's just say some things about parabolas. There's imaginary arrows there. If your picture on homework or anywhere you see a parabola, you have arrows going on the end of each line. So they're there. So remember, domains, I'm thinking about left to right. So on this particular picture, I need to look at where is the graph going on the left side. Well, on the left side, it's coming down here and it's going to -infinity. On the right side, where's the graph going? Even though it's pointed down, I'm on the positive side of x. So it's going to +infinity, because remember, when I am talking about domains, I'm only looking at this x-axis, left to right. So for this one, the domain would be -infinity to infinity. Incidentally, domains on parabolas, as long as they're smiling or frowning, is always -infinity to infinity. Write that down on a note card, pause the video if you need to, but that's how domains are on parabolas that smile or frown. Okay, so ranges we need to think. Range, I'm looking from bottom to top. And then as I'm looking at this parabola, I'm bottoming out at negative infinity. I'm looking up and down for my y values. So I know that I'm bottoming out at negative infinity. But where am I topping out? Well, on this particular parabola, look at my top point, and we need to figure out the ordered pair for that top point. Well, it looks like it is 1, 9. That's the ordered pair. And the y value for that ordered pair is the 9. So that means I'm topping out at 9. Now, on that graph, there was not an open circle up there at the top, so it's going to get a bracket for your interval notation. You're going to need to practice finding domains and ranges on graphs. You probably will practice that quite a bit at homework, but I would imagine this is where I'm going to have the most questions. So be sure and contact me if you have questions or if you get stuck.